So thank you everyone who's come this morning to see our presentation. My name is Amanda Gilbert. I'm with the Queen's Partnerships and Innovation team. And our presenter this morning is Cody from Website Design Kingston. Cody has done workshops for us in the past when we were situated in Innovation Park. We did in-person sessions. And we're having him back now today to talk about digital marketing in 2021. So I'm actually going to go ahead and pass it over to Cody. If you have questions, feel free to answer as we go along, but I'll also leave some time at the end as well for a little Q&A.
Thank you very much, Amanda. It's lovely to be here this morning. Thank you everybody that joined. My name is Cody O'Neill, and I am the operations manager here at WDK, Website Design Kingston. My background is marketing, and I started about over 15 years ago. I graduated from St. Lawrence College here in Kingston, and then my first big jobs were in Montreal. I worked with Electronic Arts. I helped them launch 2 AAA titles, and then I moved out west where I was in Vancouver for about 10 years. While I was in Vancouver, I worked for companies like Disruptive Publishers, who specialized in like microtransactions and stuff like that on like the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live. And after that, I joined the Patterson, or the Jim Patterson Group, and worked in the automotive department there. So there's representing about 25 different car dealerships all over Lower Mainland BC. I helped them develop their web presence and stuff like that for each brand. And then one of my last gigs when I was in Vancouver, I worked for Sky Zone Trampoline Parks. I helped them set up a new trampoline park in Vancouver, Surrey more specifically, and that was kind of my last gig out there. I came back to Kingston about 4 years ago and change, and I've been working freelance. And then about 3 years ago, I joined what was Response IT, which is still in existence down at the old woolen mill here in Kingston. And I joined the web department, bringing all the marketing services and all the skills that I have. And that kind of blossomed or kind of evolved into Website Design Kingston. So Website Design Kingston is a fairly young company. We're about 3 years old officially. But since, 2 of us, we're now about 8 or 9. We're up here at Princess and Bath Road in Kingston. We have our physical office here. And since then, we've actually expanded our offering and our services quite a bit. I guess with that in mind, I'll get into the presentation. Okay. Am I the host now? Oh, okay. All right. Okay, now let's move over here. And can everybody see the presentation? Okay, good. So right off the bat, we'll talk about, kind of the most common types of digital marketing that I encounter day to day here at WDK. Most of our business partners, our clients, any relationship we have are SMBs, so small to medium-sized business owners. We have a few that are a lot larger, but I would say the lion's share, like 96% of our clients are small to medium-sized business owners, which means their companies have probably less than 20 employees, on average between 10 and 25. This means that they're kind of in a weird spot where they're trying to obtain aggressive growth, but they have small budgets. So you have to be very creative in what you do day to day, and you have to have a lot of faith in the stuff that you execute. The things that we use the most commonly are, of course, Google Ads, social media, both content and paid ads. Content marketing is becoming very, very popular, collaborations, sponsorships, and perhaps the most important that we're focusing on these days is SEO, search engine optimization. The reason why we're putting an emphasis in search engine optimization is because the click-through rates and the costs, the click-through rates are going down on paid ads, the costs are going up. So what we're trying to focus on is giving the clients organic growth, meaning organic traffic from major search engines like Google, Bing, stuff like that. Paid ads will always have a place kind of in what we do because there's businesses that need the traffic now. SEO, content marketing, all these things take a little bit of time to ramp up. When they do, they're very, very effective and their conversion rates are impressive, but paid ads will start as soon as you click the button to begin and you get approved. This is kind of what people need in the beginning when they launch their website, especially if it's a brand new brand or a brand new product or service. There's no awareness about it. No one knows who these people are, what they're doing. So they need to get their name out there at the top of the page as quickly as possible and, get that traffic sent to their website. The problem with that is you get a lot of clicks, but you get people from all parts of the buying funnel. That means people at the very top who are kind of the tire kickers. They're just searching for something. It may not even be related to what they're actually, the service is providing, but it might have a couple of the keywords in it. And then as you get lower in the funnel, people are more likely to buy, they're more educated, and they have much more specific things in mind. One thing to kind of realize too is that recently they published a report on Google Ads, and they found that unless you're spending roughly $3,000 a month or more, it's not that effective. So I would say most of my clients, being SMBs, would fall into this category. In 3 years, I can maybe count on one hand a couple of companies that would be able to produce a budget in excess of $3,000 a month. Especially, that's just the ad spend. That's not the price that we charge to manage this service as well. So, when you're talking about your ad spend and they're like, oh, we only have $2,000 a month. Well, if you're charging $500 a month to manage it, that means, they're only getting, 3/4 of what's left to actually spend on the ad budget. Another thing we do when we're doing Google Ads with customers is it's a great ecosystem because we just connect the ad spend directly to the client's credit card. So we don't facilitate anything, we don't upcharge, it's completely transparent. They get the invoices, we just bill them for our services to manage it. This keeps them much more involved and they pay attention much closer because they see those bills coming in every week or every month, and that kind of fosters a little bit more collaboration and a little more communication, which is always great with clients. Clients that don't talk are a pain in the butt and they always act surprised. So going on to the next. Oh, there we go. So because these budgets are kind of smaller and they're very, very important to the client, they're obviously a lot more risky. They're putting a lot of faith into what we can do as digital marketers to increase their leads. If you can't move the needle or give them a good ROI, they typically leave very, very quickly. They kind of have a sour taste in their mouth and they don't really want to repeat the process. We get many clients who kind of come to us with this attitude. They might have a previous experience. And then we not only have to hit a home run with the ad campaign, we also have to prove that, marketers and digital, developers in general can do good work at reasonable prices and they can trust us. So there is a lot on the line when you're dealing with digital marketing. Most clients expect, very, very tangible results. And there are a lot of different aspects on marketing. Like I said earlier, if you want to do ads, you get those results very, very quickly. But if you don't have that, or you're relying on content or social media or SEO, it's more of a marathon. It's not a sprint. So if someone gets a little jittery around the 2 or 3 month mark, that's probably not a good sign, because you got to have people who understand, like, if they do this for like 6 months or a year, they will see very, very impressive results that will send traffic that's much more likely to convert. And that's what we're focused on, conversions. Initial traffic and clicks are great, but how many of those actually convert along the path all the way to becoming a customer? We can get them to the customer's email, we can get them to ring their phone, but in the end, it's up to the client to actually process the sale. So that's where a lot of different cogs and stuff come into play. Social media is really great. We use it quite often, but I use social media primarily as a branding tool, not as a lead generator. A lot of people think that social media is kind of the answer to everything in digital marketing, and it really isn't. It's a great platform to disperse branded content across multiple platforms where you can target different demographics on each one of them. But in terms of actually sending people that are paying to get the product or service to the client, it's really not as effective as people think it is. And the conversion rates are pretty lackluster. We'll get to that in just a second here. So at the bottom of this slide right now, I kind of have the way that we do it when we're starting off, say, a brand new company that's just launched a website. say that they have, just for easy math, $1,000 a month, we would probably put 75% of that toward paid advertisements and 25% to organic. That's because it's the awareness phase. We got to get it out there, and it's got to be kind of in their face and very predominant, and it's got to be right away. Again, the bummer about ads is as soon as you shut it off or you run out of budget, it stops. There's no residual ads floating around. There's no tire kickers anymore. It stops. It's like a tap. As you kind of go down the process and you maybe get into year 2, building trust is where people are aware of you, but now they're not really sure where you stand amongst their other options or your competitors. So you're in the top of their mind awareness, but they don't really have an opinion in terms of your value versus how much you charge yet. So this is where we kind of start offering more content and focusing on organic traffic. So before I get too far, there's basically 5 different types of traffic. You have direct traffic. This is web traffic I'm talking about. You have direct traffic, where someone goes into the URL bar and they actually type your website specifically. That's direct traffic. You have referral, which is someone clicked a link on another site and it sent them to your site. You have organic, which is someone searched for a particular keyword, product or service that you offer, and based on the content on your website, you were produced in the SERPs, or the search engine result page. Then there's social media. So what do we got? We got paid, we got organic, referral, direct, and social media. Those are the 5 ones. Referrals and social media are usually at the very bottom. They send traffic, but again, it's not very reliable in terms of conversion. Then the third one here we have is the content building phase. This is when we actually start to put more money on organic stuff than paid. So now we're talking about blog content, building out your service pages, and starting to get into more SEO-driven projects. Finally, say that we have something, all the foundations laid. We've pretty much done exercises and all the different options, and now it's an ongoing client. So they have ongoing business. People know who they are. They're happy with their awareness, and they just want to kind of keep their finger on the pulse to make sure that they don't fade away, or more importantly, give up any traffic to their competitors. So this is where you really start to focus on, your organic traffic, again, more of your content, and kind of at the end there, you still have some money going to paid ads. Because like I said earlier, there's always a place for that. It's just a matter of what your CPC is, your cost per click, and if there's enough meat on the bone on the products or services that you're offering. If you're selling something that is very, very low profit margins, then it's not a wise decision to put all your eggs in the ads basket, because the amount that you'll pay CPC, depending on your industry and where you're located, will probably surpass the amount of profit you make on selling that. And then you also have your time, your ops costs, and all that stuff. Another good thing about organic work on the website, if you work up to build your service pages, new blogs, lots of content, good media, that always stays with the site. So as that drives up your domain authority with Google, even if you stop doing the project and the site's still up there, you haven't worked with them in over a year, all that work you've done up until that point on the website for the organic traffic stuff, that still stays with the site. That still builds with it. It's a lifelong thing. As long as the site's up, that stays with it. And that's why it's so important, because it's more of a long-term value. And if customers want to leave 6 months or a year after doing stuff like that, they usually notice that the next year was a little bit busier than it has ever been. Slow seasons tend to be busy seasons now, and then they kind of want to capitalize on that. And they usually end up coming back to us for, smaller projects, but they kind of want to do maybe, one blog a month for the entire summer or something like that, just to kind of keep up on things. So as I'm talking about all this, the main goal, of course, is to be at the top of page 1. When we're talking about digital marketing, either it's routing someone directly to the landing page, or they're going through a search engine or a social media platform, and everything should be funneling them back or directing them back to a conversion page on your website. You can convert people on the platforms, like on Instagram. You can actually facilitate the purchase and do everything on Instagram. Same with Apple, but they get a cut. And you're in their ecosystem, you're in their sandbox, and you have to play by their rules. So we always suggest you direct them to your website or your platform so you get 100% of what you sell. If you can get to the top organic spot on the search engine result page, page 1, you get 2/3 of the clicks. You basically get 66% of the clicks. So whatever your service or products are, if you can get to that top spot, you'll get 66% of the organic volume. Now, a lot of people come to us and they say they want to get to that top spot. And they're like, we want to be number one when people search for us. It's a very vague term. That's like going to a car lot and saying, I'm interested in a car. And they're saying, okay, truck, van, like minivan, what do you want? You have to be very specific with what you want to place for. What term, what phrase, what service, what product. We've had clients that came to us, started the conversation, and they're like, yeah, we want to be number one when anybody searches Microsoft Teams because they're an official reseller of Microsoft Teams. It's not possible. It's just, in reality, there's like 2.5 billion hits when someone searches MS Teams. They're not going to place for that. There's millions of articles, reviews, product pages, all that stuff. It's just not realistic. They're not going to place even close to page one for that type of stuff. So sometimes we have to be kind of the bearer of bad news and let them focus more on, something in their area that isn't so popular, or another way of phrasing it or positioning it. But when you want to get found or you want to be in that number one spot, you have to think very clearly on what you want someone to search when you occupy that first spot. What is it? Is it your business name? Is it the industry you're in? Is it something that's very hot topic right now? Product, services, etc. A lot of people want to know, of course, what is the fastest way to do that? There is a lot of different factors at play, but basically when you launch a new website or you're improving a website for products or services, you want to get in bed with Google as much as possible. So anytime you get validated in a Google ecosystem, it gives you a little bit more trust from Google. And there are other search engines, of course. There is, Bing, there is Edge, there's Opera, there's Firefox, or not Firefox, but Bing, Yahoo. Yahoo actually uses Google's algorithm. So it's not really different. It is still part of the same. And they have like 90% of the search volume worldwide right now. So when I talk about getting found on number one, it's always Google. But do things like, and make sure that your Google Analytics are set up properly when you launch a website, so you can see all the site user data, because that will have a huge impact on what you choose to do. Always follow what the data suggests. You can also get Google Search Console. A lot of people are aware of Google Analytics, but they're not aware of Google Search Console. Google Search Console focuses purely on the organic traffic. What did someone search when they clicked on your website? What were those keywords? And then all the trends that go along with that. That is far more valuable when you're doing content marketing than just Google Analytics. Google My Business is another one. Google My Business, when anybody searches a particular business, you'll see a little placard pop up on the right side of the screen. It'll have like a picture of the business, where it's located on the map, a couple of reviews, telephone number, website, hours of operation, all that fun stuff. That little placard or card is Google My Business. And that is designed specifically for local businesses. So these are businesses that have a defined service area, which most of my clients do have here. So we're talking kind of like the Belleville, Kingston, Brockville, kind of up to Ottawa area. That would be kind of the most common area that my clients represent. That is another way of validating to Google that your business is legit, that you actually have an office. They actually snail mail you a code to validate it in the mail to kind of make sure that you are located at that spot. And if you do these couple of things, which is all free, they're all free ecosystems. Once you get in there and you do that, you fill in the information in as much as possible, add pictures. This will give you a little bit of an edge over a competitor who may have not done this stuff. And then in addition, there's the data that you can use to help move along any further projects. So we have a couple of options for every client. You have paid options and you have free options. Paid options are things like Google Ads, social media ads, so Facebook and Insta, that's the same ecosystem, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, all that fun stuff. SEO. SEO is a paid service unless you know how to do it and you're doing it for yourself. And then content writing. This is becoming quite popular with our clients because, as I said, a lot of them don't want to write their own content. They come to us, they say they want like an average 5-page website, kind of home, about us, resources, a couple other things, a blog maybe, and then a contact us page. And we're like, okay, with the exception of the contact us page and resources, you need about 500 words per page. Then they're like, well, what should I write about? It's like, well, write about the company, write about this, write about that, whatever the page is about. And then they kind of have a blank face, and they don't want to write it. They don't have the time. Maybe they're not comfortable with it. So a lot of the times they just come back to us and be saying, can you write it? And so then we take it over, we do creative briefs, and then we kind of make sure that whatever we're writing about has strong SEO. So what we do is we look at the keywords that they want to place for, and then we find a good combination of high volume but low competition. So that kind of equals like kind of the low hanging fruit, which stuff, if you write about, will get a lot of organic traffic quickly without much competition. The higher volume you go, usually the competition will come with you. So it does have a high volume of search traffic, but at the same time, you got a lot of people chomping at that bit to get that traffic. And some of these companies, depending on what service or product you're offering, might have 6-7 figure budgets to spend every year. And the bottom line is you're just never going to surpass that. You're never going to beat them. You might be able to beat them in CPC on the auction, but if they have a better landing page experience, Google will still send them to you. So these are just some things to be aware of. Free social media posts. These are organic posts that you guys, just post about your company, about your products, what's going on, cool stuff around the office. This is great, but again, it's more of a branding experience than encouraging people to buy. You can sponsor posts or boost posts in social media in addition to doing straight up ad campaigns. They have mixed results. I've had some that have worked very, very well. I've had some that have kind of been lackluster. So, if you're going to go with social media to get your name out there, be very selective on which platforms you choose. A lot of people think that they have to do all of the big ones. This is not the case. Facebook has obviously kind of had its day in the sun. It's primarily used by the older demographic now. Twitter is actually starting to do the same. The fastest growing segments on Twitter right now is actually, I think, 55 plus. So a lot of older people are starting to come around to Twitter. But again, if you wanted to focus on like fashion or something like that, you would probably focus on Insta and TikTok, because you would get people who are a lot more sensitive to those things. And a lot more of those demos are on those platforms. Another thing is if you're doing like services, it's kind of hard to be on fully visual platforms. So Instagram, for example, is a visual platform. If you don't have a picture, you don't have a post. So it's really hard to depict a service being offered besides using kind of corny stock images and kind of reusing them over and over and over again. So if you did have a service, it might be wiser to focus on like LinkedIn and Twitter, where you can post purely text or links as well as photos, stuff like that. Content writing, again, if you are an expert in what you're offering, if you're an entrepreneur, then by all means, start writing blogs. That'll ring true. And blogs should always be educational. They should never be like really maximized to sell or push a lot of CTAs. A simple call to action at the bottom of a blog will always suffice. If you want to put your effort into trying to get people to buy something or to try and make them do an action, focus that on your landing pages, because those are the pages that will convert. Any questions so far? Let me check the chat here. Okay. So the most common types of digital ads on the Google platform are search ads. So there's search, display, there's smart ads, there's a whole bunch of different ones, but the most common and the most affordable are search ads. So these are 100% text, there's no imagery at all. Here's an example of one that we have for our SEO services. And so when I set this up, I wrote the title, I wrote the call to action, the description. I even put all the little, the 5 little clicks there at the bottom there for contact us, about us, view portfolio. We activated the map extension. So if you click that, it'll show them the map, phone number, all that fun stuff. There's probably about 7 different services that we offer that we have search ads for, and we probably have 5 to 7 variations of each one. So extrapolate that, and that will, we're in the high 30s or 40s there. And that is kind of how that works. You have to be really careful if you're doing search ads for services that are kind of similar. You have to make sure that there's no kind of keyword crossover or cannibalization. because then the ad they click, if they go to the wrong landing page, that could cause them to bounce back and just go back to the search results. And that's a horrible thing to have happen when you're actually paying someone to do your digital ads, because what you've done there is essentially increase their bounce rate, and Google will begin to deprioritize them in SERPs the more that happens. So essentially, you've just contributed to them being lower in the SERPs, not higher in the SERPs. So that's why you really have to have a very close eye on these type of things and make sure that they're not doing that. And Google changes stuff so much. They change it a lot. It's a very complicated ecosystem, and something popped in here. It's a very complicated ecosystem, and they update it quite frequently. They are integrating machine learning into the entire algorithm now, which means you can watch a lot of different speeches and talks on this stuff. But basically right now, Google is trying to harness in or hold back two giant dogs that are trying to lunge forward. This is the machine learning, and they're trying to hold it back and not let it take up as much as possible. But what's going to happen really probably by 2025 is that everybody's search engine result is going to be unique to them, meaning there's not going to be something that works across the board for everybody. This means that me and say Amanda could stand in the same parking lot on the same Wi-Fi, using the exact same device on the same OS, type in the exact same search in Google, and get completely different results based on our experiences. Because Google basically has about 5,000 data points on every single one of us now. So not to get too, conspiracy theory, but 5,000 data points is considerable. Like age, sex, location, that's just 3. You know what I mean? Facebook bought MasterCard's data last year. So now Facebook and Instagram know every time you charged anything on your MasterCard, your entire life. They know this. So it's getting very, very specific to you. And what that means is you have to start being very, very aware of what's going on your results, what types of segments are doing what types of things, because you'll always have segments. Everybody will have kind of their own unique experience, but you'll always have kind of segments that can be grouped together. But this is where it's going, make no mistake. So search ads, like I said, they're the easiest to set up. They are usually the most affordable. The way it works is you basically are included in an auction that happens in milliseconds of when someone does a search. They bring up every single business that's advertising that have keywords related to that search query. And then they look at your landing page experience, which can include load times, descriptions, stuff like that. And then basically they prioritize it. And that's how they judge the order of the ads as they're shown. So this means I could be willing to spend $10 to get that click, but Amanda might only be willing to spend $5. But she has a better website and a better landing page experience, and it loads faster and has better media. People spend more time on her page. She could still win the auction, even at a lower bid. So a lot of people think if they throw more money at the problem, it's going to eventually go their way, and that's not necessarily the problem. But make no mistake, Google is more than happy to take your money, because this platform right here, Google Ads, is what pays for everything. Everything else that Google has is free. This is the only thing that costs money, and everybody's playing on this platform. So they're making obscene amounts of money every single hour. So they're getting pretty good at how they're kind of dividing it up. I know me personally, I manage probably about, off the top of my head right now, just under 10 ad accounts right now. And every month you get a new ad representative from Google trying to call you, telling you, oh, this is a new way we suggest you change your bidding strategy. And in the end, it's always geared to make you spend more money. So you have to be very careful on their recommendations. So yeah, basically what they do is you set a monthly ad budget. Say you want to spend $500, you divide that by 30.2, and that is your daily ad spend. What that means is sometimes they might automatically go over your daily ad spend to make you get more clicks, but they'll make sure that it's throttled the next couple of days so that by the end of the month, your monthly budget is exactly what it's supposed to be. But it does vary little by little depending on your bidding strategy. CPC is the best way to go, cost per click. You don't get charged if someone sees your ad or just an impression. They only pay when they click on it, or you only pay when they click on it. So that's pretty much the most justifiable form of marketing. TV, radio, print, outdoor, none of them can offer that. And that's why so many people are leaving them. I mean, you'll always have radio. I mean, as long as you have car dealerships, I think you'll always have radio because they stick to that stuff. But for the most part, it's kind of the best way to go, just because you can sit down at the end of the month with the client and you can be like, you spent $500, you got 50 clicks. How much money do you make, or how many people did you convert? How much was your margin of profit? And then they can instantly see their ROI. You really have to do 4 or 5 steps before they see their return on investment. And that's really, really important for small business owners who only have so much money. They're very, very interested to know what their return on investment is. And rightfully so too. I mean, that's the only metric that really matters in the end. The next type of ads are the display ads. So these are like the banner ads that we see that have visual components, or like it's a short GIF running or something like that, typically referred to as banner ads. These are great. They are getting quite dated, but they do have very, very low cost per clicks, and they usually send a high volume of traffic. In my experience though, and you can read a lot of different articles on this, I would say probably at least half of the clicks you get from a display ad are accidental. Meaning most of them come from mobile, and someone just accidentally, as they were scrolling, clicked it, or, you know, whatever app you're using. Sometimes we do the accidental clicks. And once that happens, and then they go to the site and instantly come back, like they instantly press back because it was an accident. That's kind of like the worst type of bounce you can have. They didn't interact with the page at all, and they went right back. So what you can have is now you're paying for display ads that are now negatively contributing towards your bounce ad. And that can really start to become a vicious cycle. So again, another reason to pay close attention to that and make sure that it doesn't get too far. Smart ads. This is basically one of the new things that Google's offering right now. You can basically take a couple of images, a couple of URLs, headlines, descriptions, taglines, and you give them like 5 or 10 of each, and they actually put it together for you in the exact moment of the auction and present it. So you don't really know what the combination of those are going to be. Sometimes they look just like any other well-written ad, but sometimes they get a little garbled and it doesn't really make much sense. It might be the headline for one thing, and then the description is talking about a slightly different thing, and then the destination URL could be just the generic homepage. So in my experience, smart ads are, if you can think of 5 to 10 really good taglines, descriptions, headers, and all that stuff that works well together, then you could be quite successful. But for the most part, it can come off as a little bit confusing. Of course, next, after paid ads, you have social media. Social media is great, but it's not the ultimate solution people pretend it is. It can produce success, but if that's usually when you have a considerable budget, like $25,000, $50,000, $100,000, and you have a whole team of writers, experts, designers, etc. It can be very successful if you're like a startup and you offer like things like crafts or stuff that you make yourself. Sites such as Etsy, Pinterest, Instagram, and stuff like that, they can actually be the only platform you really need, because you can facilitate the transaction on that platform. You don't need to set up a website. You don't need to set up a new bank account or anything like that. So if you're okay with giving up a slice of 20, 30% of it to the platform itself, then that can be a really, really good way to kind of get your name out there in those early stages and at least get a buzz going, get some money, some capital coming in. One thing I always remind people when they're doing social media is that as soon as you post something, whether it's personal or for business, you no longer own it. It's their property. So if you're putting all of your eggs in their basket to be your only digital or virtual storefront, and you mess up once, or they do an update, or something happens, everything can be erased overnight. And I have seen this happen many, many times. Some people, all of a sudden everything was $500 a year, and then the second year it was $1,500. And then they're like, I don't want to pay that much. I want to leave and take my website with me. And they're like, you don't own your website. We own your website. We own all the content on your website. That means even if you wrote your content and built this website, you no longer can take that content and move it over to a new site because it's technically their property. The same as if any other social media, whenever you post anything, that's now their property. They can use it for their advertising. They can do whatever they want with it. So another reason to be kind of wary of social media. And as I said earlier too, you don't have to be on every platform. That's just way too much work. You can get a couple of programs like Hootsuite. SEMrush is actually a really good one. And basically you can post once in one editor, link all your accounts, and it'll automatically push to every single one. This is really, really good if you're, you have a big name out there and you got a lot of followers. It can save a ton of time. But in the end, most of us don't need to be on LinkedIn. Unless you're doing B2B, then you should be on LinkedIn. But a lot of these different ones like, the marina or a steel supply yard does not need to be on TikTok. They can be on TikTok if they want, but they're not going to get any customers from TikTok. There's not a lot of people buying Fashion Nova and then buying steel girders. So it's just kind of makes common sense to look at the segment that you're trying to pursue. Social media ads is very, very effective. But again, it can be quite expensive. It's just like Google Ads. The industry you're in, the competitive nature of it, and the geographic area that you're targeting can all play a huge factor. Some people might get away with paying $2 CPC. Some companies might get $40 per click. It is a very competitive area. So, it's good to know that stuff before you start going in there and allocating a budget. Look at what other people are paying and stuff like that. There's a couple of tools out there that you can get kind of estimates based on what information you provide. The frequency in which people visit social media also means the publisher needs to change and updates their ads and content just as frequently. So if you are doing an ad, say on your website, and it's just part of that rotating carousel of banners, like on the homepage, businesses could leave that up for 2 or 3 months. It won't really get stale because people don't visit the website that often. They only visit once or twice. And then, they kind of either move on to the next one or they pursue it and they become a client. But if you're advertising on social media, people are on there like 5-6 times a day. So if you're trying to target them and you're using the same ad for even a week, they can get pretty used to or pretty apathetic towards your calls to action, and they could just ignore you. So that's kind of another thing you have to be aware of. Your frequency in which you change up your messaging, your visuals is much, much higher. So that requires more time. Are you getting these images on your own? Are you paying a photographer? Are you getting licensed images from like a, Unsplash or Flickr or something like that? Boosting posts is quite effective if you're having like an event. So that's when you make a regular post about something like on Facebook or Insta, and then you can boost it, which means that they kind of come in and they're like, hey, if you put $50 towards this over the next week, we can triple the amount of people it's exposed to. So you can choose, just a geographic area. You can choose people who follow your page. You can choose people who are friends with people who follow your page, which is usually the one I select because the people who follow you will see it anyway. And then kind of, spider web out from there. People tend to flock with people who have similar tastes. So that's usually a good way to go about it. And then now SEO. So about 2 years ago, we started putting a considerable effort towards SEO just because digital ads were kind of unreliable on across the board with all of our customers. What we found works the best is if you do a lot of investigation, get a couple of programs that really help you out to get in there and kind of look at what everybody else is doing. So we can take, say, for example, a local law firm. They can tell us who their main competitors are, the guys that are always number one on the SERPs. We can put their URL into a couple of different tools, and we can get a very, very detailed breakdown of how much traffic they get, what pages are getting visited the most, and kind of an estimate of conversions. So what we can do is then we can kind of take that information and use it as a foundation for their plan. You're kind of standing on the shoulders of other people's success. And I mean, that's just the way marketing is. So it's a very effective way to do it. And again, if they're okay with that slow, gradual buildup over time of traffic, then it's a very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a very productive kind of exercise. As I said there earlier, there's the 5 types of traffic: organic, direct, referral, social, and paid. Everybody should kind of have a mix of all of them. But again, putting most of your eggs in the organic basket, targeting SEO will get you the most tangible results, also the most long-term results. There's a lot of different parts about SEO. There's the technical stuff. There's, the content, there's off page, on page, there's metadata. There's a ton of stuff that kind of goes into it. There's load times, there's all sorts of stuff. But if you have someone that knows what they're doing, it can be very, very effective. And word travels fast, especially in a town like Kingston, where we're kind of a smaller city. Excuse me. Word travels very, very fast. So if you kind of have a couple of good success stories, usually within 6 months or so, you'll get someone who's in a very similar business, and they heard from so-and-so that you did good work for them, and, it kind of goes out from there. So we've had very, very good success with it, and we're going to continue focusing on that in the near future. So there is two types of SEO. There's local and then there's national. As I said earlier with Google My Business, that focuses on local SEO. So these are businesses that have, for example, services, and they can't offer services to Vancouver. They have a very defined geo area. So like I said, Belleville, Kingston, Brockville, that's usually kind of the standard around here. National, on the other hand, are businesses that would be like banks, any franchise that has multiple locations, or a completely virtual experience. So if you're just a retailer and you're just selling stuff and you're drop shipping it, then national would probably be the way to go. You can't use Google My Business for national campaigns because, for obvious reasons, if you have multiple locations, multiple different hours, multiple different reviews, you can't have that all in one kind of consolidated placard. Those are designed for one specific business and then to just kind of focus on that one business. Once you get to a national level, that basically just becomes a very truncated piece of information. Here's all the locations you can find. Here's a little bit more information. It's almost like a featured snippet at that point. If you're selling worldwide, then you need to shift your tactics even more. And then you also need to now start considering, languages, all that fun stuff. Google My Business, yes, we already talked about that. So here's an example of our WDK's Google My Business placard. It's got a photo there from our landing page where we're located on the map, a little image of the building, our Google rating, locations, hours of op, phone number, all of our contact information. So that's what it looks like when it's complete. If you start a business and you launch a website, Google will automatically make this for you. They will go onto your website, they'll go to Yellow Pages, they'll grab any little bit of information that they think is correct. They'll go take snapshots of your website, and then they'll just make this for you, and they'll put it up there. So it's up to you, if you do that, to go in and make sure that you claim it, right where it says province in Ontario at the very bottom of that. It also would have claimed this business if it hadn't been claimed already. You would click that, you would fill out the information, and then, like I said earlier, they would they would snail mail you an alphanumeric code to confirm it. And then once you put that in, you now have control on a dashboard of all the information that's contained here. So, you could add images that make the business look much, much better, like glamour shots, make sure that the best images are shown, so on and so forth. So continuing on SEO, SEO works best when every service or product has its own page. If you have like a one-page website, or you're trying to put all your services on one page, you can only really pick one metadata title. So that's what tells Google and the algorithms what this page is about. So if you have 5 things, you basically have to pick one, and that's what the page is about. The other 4, they don't get any attention. So you got to split these things up so that each one gets its own page, its own dedicated spot, and then talk, 350, 500 words about that one particular product or service. A lot of people right now are starting to go towards Wix, Squarespace, Shopify, even GoDaddy is offering free web builders. It's very attractive in the beginning to go with a free web builder that gives you basically a free website. You probably have to pay for hosting, obviously. But the problem with this is it's a very, very rigid, defined sandbox. You can't go outside of it. And what they have for SEO, the ability to go into the back end of the website and apply these techniques, is kind of non-existent on some of these. Squarespace is getting a little bit better, but Wix is a huge pain in the butt. And we get a lot of customers who, may have come to us before or haven't talked to us at all, and they have a website, but it's Wix. And they're like, hey, we've had this website up for like 2 years, but like, we're not even on like page 3. And like, these random guys from Ottawa are outdoing us. Like, how is this possible? And it's because they don't really have any SEO abilities to them at all. They are start trying to add them. I know Shopify is hiring like 1,000 more software engineers or something like that crazy to try and expand these abilities. But for the most part now, you need kind of your own CMS, which is a content management system like WordPress. We use WordPress the most here, just because it's the most popular and therefore the most stable. If it's popular, that means all the third-party developers will develop their apps for this platform. They'll update them more. There's more security patches, so on and so forth. So that's what you want when you're building a website. You want the ability to be able to expand over time to whatever that can be. You can start off very, very modest, but at least you'll have all these abilities to, optimize your modest amount of content. And then as you grow, you can keep adding more and more and more to it. Joomla is another good one. But that's got a lot more drilled down abilities to do like every little thing you want to do with every little line. And that's like, we would use Joomla, for example, for like, like a medical clinic or something like that has a lot of content, or a physiotherapy clinic that has a lot of content, a lot of like book appointment functions and stuff like that. So continuing on that, we get to content marketing, because if you want to optimize content or your website for SEO, you need content to optimize. And it's a very common occurrence, as I said, that people aren't comfortable with creating that content. So what we do is we kind of work with them, what their goals are, who those people who are placing first right now for those products or services, how they're doing it, and then kind of start developing a plan on what content we want to do. Some people come to us with maybe a typical 5-page website, and they want new content, but they want it all for the blogs. They just want 2 blogs a month, something like that, very common. The problem is those pages aren't designed to convert, so it makes more sense to redo their service pages first, so that they're more likely to convert people, and then move on to things like the blogs and stuff like that. Yeah. Yes, one of the main benefits at the bottom here is talking about how SEO means all the data can be viewed and quantified. So at the end of the month, we typically have a monthly meeting with the client, where myself and the SEO manager give them a report like the day before of all the past month's metrics, all the tasks that were completed, and what's next. And we go through that. Sometimes it's it's a little much, because you're going through like 12 or 15 pages worth of data, and most of these people don't have a clue what the data actually represents. But after we get past the 2nd month, the 3rd month, they start to realize what it means, what to look for, and they become very empowered and very educated. A lot of the times when we get people at that level, who are in it for the long haul, they begin to actually take over some of the responsibilities. They're like, actually, I feel comfortable I could write about this one topic, and I know how to write now because I've seen 5 or 6 of what you guys have done. So I'm going to try and mimic that kind of format. And when they're the experts in the field and they know how to write now, that content usually comes across as very, very well written and very insightful. And that's, again, what drives up the most traffic. We've gotten some clients that have written about a particular topic, and in 2 days, since we posted it on their website, it became the featured snippet. So that's when someone at the very, when you pose a question, you get that little snippet at the top, and it basically gives you an italicized answer to what your question was without clicking anything. It's right there in the SERPs. And then underneath it, it'll have the link to take you to that web page where it's mentioned. But if you can get that featured snippet, then that's like the golden goose of what you want to do, because you're going to get a lot of those clicks right off the top. Okay. So basically wrapping it all up, the key to success in digital marketing right now is acting in a very strategic manner, and don't make any assumptions based on previous exposure or preferences. I know a lot of people coming out right now, and I talk to them, they have all these opinions and stuff because it worked on them. They're not the typical customer. A lot of our business owners and stuff and our clients, they are immersed in their business and what they do all day, every day. So what they're thinking of what's going to work to talk to people or use industry lingo or acronyms that no one understands besides them, that's not the case. So you really have to put it into the mind of what is the person who's searching for this? How do they look for their content? What do they do? So on and so forth. spend your time proportionally and your money. If one platform or tactic produces 80% of your sales, then put 80% of your time and 80% of your budget on that. Don't try and make something work, or don't try and force it. In marketing, that never really works out the way you want. And in the end, you're just spending the client's dollars when you could get those dollars instead. When searching online, get unbiased results. So if I've had this happen a lot of times, I've been at like a mixer or a networking event, and I've been talking about a business owner about SEO, and they're like, I got my SEO dialed, check this out. They'll search for their business name, not the product or service, their business name, on their phone with the cookies that's in their Chrome, and they've searched and gone to their website a million times, and it'll come up first, and they're like, look at that, number one. It's like, that's not how it works at all. If you want to see an unbiased opinion on how a site ranks, always use incognito mode. It's called different things on different browsers, but on Google, it's called incognito mode. Which that does is it doesn't take into account your cookies or your history, and it basically just a fresh search for that particular thing. If you're number one when you do something in incognito mode, then that means you're doing good. Like, it actually is an accurate representation of what you're doing. But make sure that you're not kind of looking at the world through your own blinders and stuff like that, because that happens quite a bit. And people kind of think that that's the case, but then they don't understand why they're not getting business, and they don't understand it's because that's not the case. So you kind of have to re-educate them sometimes in a very polite way. And usually what I do is I take out mine, I put it in incognito mode, I search for the exact same thing, and say you're at the bottom of page 2, and they're like, oh, I don't know how that happened, and then you start the conversation a little bit more. So that's kind of, a really quick rundown, a condensed rundown of the type of things that you can do in digital marketing today. What we do on a typical day here at WDK, like I said before, social media is not the answer to everything. It is a great branding experience, and it reinforces your brand, but also take into consideration you no longer own that content. So that's a big thing to consider with that. SEO, in my opinion, is the way to go. Writing, keyword-rich content that's been researched produces the best results of anything that I've seen so far. And again, SEO is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Google ads are great, but really keep your eye on it. It's not something that you can just kind of set up and walk away from. A lot of people think that, because they've set up a couple of ads and a couple of exercises or classes, that they know how it works. But really, until you launch the ad campaign with real dollars behind it, you haven't really experienced it at all yet. So you have to really make sure that you know what you're doing before you click launch and you start that campaign, because you're charging someone as an expert to do this, and you're spending their money. So you have to pay very, very close attention to what they're doing, to what Google's doing. And, like I said, they're going to call, they're going to give recommendations. You should do this, increase your bidding strategy, increase your spend, expand your geo area. Sometimes it is the right decision, but a lot of the times it just ends up you're spending more money and you get the same results. So kind of in conclusion, wrapping it all up there, make sure that you have a really good mix of each one of those tactics. And that way you'll kind of be able to move as things change, because things actually change quite a bit. Clients, they might start out with, a couple $1,000s a month, and then a month 2, they're like, we had a huge unforeseen expense. We got to cut the budget down to $500 a month. So you have to be able to still go in there, chop half of it away, and still get them impressive results. So being able to kind of move with the punches and keep your head on a swivel is also very important. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it in terms of the slide. If anybody has any questions, be more than happy to answer them.
I actually have a question, Cody. You were saying like Squarespace and Wix, if you're using those free websites, they own your content. So if you were to then like establish one of those and then wanted to switch your business over to WordPress or something like that, would you have to be starting from scratch with your content because it's owned by another platform, or could you take that?
You could take it. Usually they request a pretty hefty fee to do it.
Oh, okay.
I've heard upwards of $10,000.
Oh, wow.
For a site that's really nothing special.
Right. So like to take your blog content and move it over?
You could take it over. You could just copy it and then paste it in a new website and launch that new website.
Okay.
However, they could come after you for that and get it taken down,
Mm.
or you could get pegged with duplicate content. Now, duplicate content's not as likely because they would still have to have the original site up
Mm.
and your new site up at the same time for there to be
Right.
duplicate content. Once you say you want to move or you stop, paying the hosting or whatever you do, they take that site down right away. That's pretty much their only card they can play. But that is a big problem. And even the same thing with people who post content on social media and want to bring it over to their website.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same issues. Facebook and social media won't charge you for it, but they will say it is their content, and wherever they take it from there is up to them.
Okay, that's good to know.
All right. Anything else?
I think that's everything, unless anybody else has questions. I think a few people have already logged off. So thank you so much for coming in and doing this presentation. Yeah, I found it really interesting, and how nuanced Google ads and social media ads can be. And that incognito mode that you talked about at the end, I was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't really think about that.
Yeah, and like I said, it's going towards that where in a very, very short amount of time, everybody's results will be completely individual to them or completely unique to them. So what tactics are going to work when that happens, I have no idea.
Right.
Again, I think there'll always be kind of those segments of kind of, they're going to lump them into segments in terms of users or customers, clients, whatever you want to call them. So you can kind of formulate approaches to each one of them. But within that, you're right, there's going to be so much nuance and stuff like that that you probably won't be able to consider on the fly. But it'll definitely be interesting to see where it goes. I mean, it makes our life very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Always trying to catch up with whatever Google's coming out with.
Yeah, well, trying to design marketing initiatives around an algorithm that constantly changes and they never tell you when it's going to change. Like that's the thing. That's like that's like KFC's recipe or the Coca-Cola recipe. Like it's very, very guarded. They don't even let their head programmers see the whole picture. Everybody sees what they want to, or only what they're responsible to see. So they don't even know when big changes are coming down the pipe. And all that happens is one day everybody logs on, looks at the metrics, and some just take a nosedive. And everybody's like, what happened? I haven't changed anything. I'm doing the same approach. And like the algorithm had an update, and now what you were doing is actually seen as a negative. And that's going to hurt you. So like you instantly have to readjust. Sometimes it just crashes and then it kind of builds back up again in a week or two. So if you pivot too quickly and react, that could hurt you. So sometimes you have to sit back and wait for like a week or two to see if it rights itself. And if it doesn't, then yeah, absolutely make some moves. But if it does right itself, you're kind of like, okay, I weathered the storm and we're on our way back up to the top.
It's a lot to keep in mind. Nicole just wrote in the chat, what was it we had to watch for with Google ads that caused bounce back?
Oh, right. So if you're doing display ads, so these are the visual ads, the banner ads. If you are doing those, just be very, very careful. There's a lot of different knowledge out there that has some pretty wild estimates. I think I've seen some estimates that say like 75% of display clicks are accidental. And that's because the primary shift now, more people use Google on a mobile than on a desktop. So the incident rate of accidental clicks is higher on a mobile because it's more cumbersome and you're using your thumb to scroll and there's not so much of a tactile touch. And if you're doing those type of ads, it can be like, if you're paying for 75% of accidental clicks, like even on the low end, that's horrible. And that's gonna, again, people are gonna go, oh crap, didn't mean to do that. They're gonna go back right away. And every time that happens, you'll cause a bounce back. And what they mean by bounce back is that person didn't interact with the page at all. So they didn't scroll down below the digital fold. They didn't expand some truncated information. They didn't click on a video. They didn't do anything. They instantly pressed the back button. And however many times that happens per like 100 or 1,000 visitors is your bounce rate. Google changed it like 2 months ago. engagement rate, they call it now. So that's one thing that if it gets too high, then they basically decide that the information contained on that page does not answer the query that was posed. So therefore, not only will they devalue, they'll probably get you out of there pretty quickly, like kind of pull the rug out from underneath you and send you to like page 6 or 7 or something like that, where no one goes. So it's kind of one of those things, you know, that's that old saying. It's like, where do you want to hide a dead body? Just put it on page 2 on Google results, because no one ever looks there. So it's one of those things that as soon as you get off page 1, like now you're getting like 0.1% of the clicks, because it goes from like 66%, like 20%, 10, 7. It goes down very, very quickly the further you go down the page. So yeah, that's what you should look for. Display ads on Google. Be careful about those.
Great. Good to know. Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
I don't see anything else in the chat. So maybe we'll. Oh, and Nicole said thanks so much.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cody. I think it was really helpful, and I've recorded it. I'll let our Startup Runway clients know that they missed out on a great workshop if they were not able to make it today. So hopefully they can catch it on the recording. Really, really interesting, insightful stuff.
Yeah, I hope it wasn't too dry, because I mean,
oh no.
Digital marketing seems like it's so interesting, and it's just going to be all cool campaigns and making videos and stuff like that. But like, it's such a kind of a fragmented market now. You really have to kind of, and then each one can go down such a large rabbit hole. And the key is not to go down these rabbit holes on talks like this, or else it'll just get so boring.
Right. Yeah, it can be convoluted, I guess.
Yes, that's very much
how
so.
You get into the little alleys of it, but I don't know. I'm in communications, so I find it fascinating, but
thank you very much, Amanda.
You're welcome. But thank you so much for coming in and chatting today. This is really great.
Yeah, and as always, I'm always happy to do it again. If you guys want to drill down into something a little more specific or talk about something else like web design, always happy to give you guys some time to talk about it.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a
Enjoy
great day.
the rest of your day.
I will. Thank you.
Thanks.